Hey folks, welcome to the 30 Days to Learn Adobe After Effects course. My name is Vincent Nguyen, and today in this lesson we're going to be talking about track mats and the introduction to track mats and how they work within After Effects. So here in After Effects I have the same composition open as the previous lessons, the layer maps composition, and again I just have some basic footage here. And today we're going to be talking about the track mat column right here. So if you don't see the track mat columns, hit toggle switches / modes until you see the track mat column here. And let me just show you what they do. So again, they're very similar to layer maps. They're going to be using one layer to drive another layer. And this is what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to create a new layer, make it a black solid, call it track mat. Alright, and this time we're going to apply a fractal noise effect. And what that's going to do is very similar to Photoshop. It's going to create a fractal noise, very basic. I'm going to pump the contrast up to 200 just so we get a very contrast look here. And I'm going to go to the transform and just scale this thing up. So basically what you have here is just a black and white kind of fractal cloud. And as you can see, if I toggle the transparency switch here, we don't have any transparency. This is just pure black and white pixels as you see here. Now how does this relate to track mats? Well, if you go back to our footage layer, under the track mat column, you can see that we have four options here: the alpha mat, alpha inverted, which is just the opposite of the alpha mat, luma mat, and luma mat inverted, which is again the opposite of the luma mat. Now the alpha mat is referring to the alpha channel, and the luma mat is referring to the luminance channel. So as you can see, we have luminance here. Our track mat has some white bright values here, and this is the luminance. So watch what happens when I set the footage track mat to luma mat. As you can see, the footage is looking at the layer right above it, which is our track mat, and it's looking at the luminance value, which is the white values here, the bright areas, and it's kind of using it to cut our footage out, as you can see here. Now if I switch it to luma mat inverted, it's just going to use the black values. So it's just kind of the reverse of it, or the invert of it. So I'm going to shut this thing off and just show you one more time. As you can see, we have white values here, and if we just set it to luma mat, it's going to kind of cut everything out and you'll leave the white areas intact, as you see. So it's kind of like cropping things out using the luminance, and it's always going to look at the layer right above it. So that's the luma mat and the luma inverted mat, and this is very useful if you want to create maybe like this kind of cloudy effect or use other layers to control other layers based on their brightness values. Now let's go ahead and talk about the alpha mat here. So let me just delete this track mat so we just have our plain footage here. Now let me just shut that off for a second. This is what I want to talk about right here. As you can see, when we have nothing in the composition, we have transparent pixels, right? We don't have anything in the composition, so there's really no layers here. So in theory, this should be transparent because nothing is here. But you're seeing a black window. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have transparency. After Effects picks a filler color for you when it's transparent. So by default, we see black. But if you toggle the transparency switch, you can see that we actually do have transparency. After Effects just sets the background to black, kind of as a default. And that may kind of confuse you or trip you up, but again, just because we have a black background here doesn't necessarily mean that we have no transparency. Just toggle switches / modes, and you should be kind of clear on whether or not if you have transparency or not. So back to the tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and create a text layer. So let's go to Layer, New, Text. I'm going to type in track mat, very nice, big, and bulky letters here. And I'm just going to turn back on our footage. So what we have here is, again, text. And remember, the text does have transparency. Our text layer does have some transparency here. And we're going to use that transparency to kind of cut out our footage. So again, I'm going to go to the footage here, under track mat, and I'm going to set it to alpha mat. And remember, mats look at layers right above it. So in this case, the layer right above our footage is our text layer with the alpha channel. So I'm going to set the track mat to alpha mat. And as you can see, it's using the transparency to cut things out. And so what we're left is our footage in the shape of our text. And this is pretty cool. This is very similar to how you do it in Photoshop. And we can move around our footage, and you can see it kind of just keeps the text in place here. We can move around the texture. That's pretty interesting. So what happens if we go to alpha inverted? Well, it's going to do the exact opposite. It's going to use the non-transparent pixels as a cutout and use the transparency as the kind of filler here. So as you can see, just a very basic concept. It'll be very useful when you want to texture something or create a really awesome smoky reveal and such like that. So really basic overview of track mats in After Effects and how to use them. Now you know what this column is used for. I use it all the time, really great. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about working with audio, looking at the waveforms, audio visualizations, and markers within After Effects to help you work with audio within the application. So if you guys have any further questions, leave me a message in the forum. I'll get to them as soon as I can. And once again, guys, my name is Vincent Wynn, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Bye, guys.